Matt, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Good. Now, don't tell anybody, okay? You got to promise that you're on in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I'm going to lead out with a basketball question. So I apologize up to start. But what was your big takeaway from last night's game? Did you have a chance to watch it?
Yeah, I think what we saw last night was, obviously North Carolina was the best team in the country, and you look at what they did against Gonzaga. I think they played relatively okay. I agree with some of the people's assessment today that, I thought some of the officiating, some of the calls late in the game were a little questionable. But, in the end, it came down to, making the plays, and that's what North Carolina was able to do. And, it caps off a stellar season for both the Carolinas with Clemson and UNC winning their national championships of football and basketball, respectively.
When you look back, and here in Tuscaloosa, it's not the main reason why Alabama lost. They lost because they couldn't complete or couldn't pick up third downs or first downs on third down. But Clemson, there was a couple of calls in that game that didn't really go the way that Alabama fans would have wanted, whether you're talking about the pick play or some others. But you look back at officiating across the board, it definitely needs to improve as the college athletics become more important, the popularity of the game, football, basketball side of things. Is it time that we might look at a universal group of officials and try to get them to maybe distribute them rather than a conference play, and maybe we can go after more quality guys?
Yeah, I think there's something definitely to look at, and I think you're going to see a lot of these conferences really start to kind of give that a closer look over the next couple of months, especially as they get into their into their spring meetings and everything. Because I think it's something that needs to be addressed. We're seeing it more and more. You're seeing the college games adjusting. They're going to a more instant replay. They're putting in, direct lines into their headquarters where they can review, collaborative instant replay review. I think you're seeing it at the basketball level as well. I think it just needs to continue to get better. I think there's been a period there for a while where we kind of just accepted that, officials were going to make the right calls. And now I think because of replay and things like that, I think that, these leagues are looking at the idea of trying to get better and how can they get better. So I think over the next couple of years, you're going to see definite improvement. I think it has to improve because you can't have the inconsistencies in between games like we had, especially in this NCAA tournament.
Matt, you're right there in the line of ACC and the SEC and sort of the intersection of this conference as far as college football. There's a big national conversation going on that the SEC has slipped and the ACC's taken the place. Where do you see it from someone who covers both?
Well, I think both leagues have had their strengths. I think the ACC had obviously a pretty good year last year. I think a lot of it comes in cycles, comes in waves. The SEC went through its dominant part, obviously through the BCS era, and I think obviously Alabama winning the title last year was huge. And for them to get back to the national title game again, it shows that the SEC is still a top conference. But I think you're seeing the other conferences trying to step up their game. We saw the ACC do that. We're seeing the Big Ten do it. I think the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are trying to catch up as well. But, because there was such a gap between the SEC and everyone else, I think it's taken a little bit of time. But now schools are spending money on their coaching staff, spending money on their facilities. You look at what Clemson's doing. You look at what some of these other schools like Florida are trying to do. I think everybody's trying to kind of play catch-up now to the SEC. And eventually I think, whether it's going to be the ACC coming on the next year or two or whether it's going to be the Big Ten, I think eventually we're just going to see this kind of wave. Maybe in a couple of years it'll be one conference will be strong, and then maybe another conference will make catch-up as they try to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak.
When you look at, you said quality of coaches and the coaches there, to me, I see the stronger coaches when I look at them comparing in the ACC. The SEC, to me, when I look at Nick Saban, he's up here, and then number two, there's a big gap between 1 and 2 in the league. Do you see it that way too?
Yeah, I do, especially in the last couple of years. This past year we saw Mark Richt, who made the jump from the SEC from Georgia to go over to Miami. I think his presence there helped boost that program. You saw a guy like Justin Fuente. He went from Memphis and he really kind of, helped, a big young coaching spot for him there at, Virginia Tech. And I just think you're seeing Jimbo and Dabo and, you're seeing some other guys, Bobby Petrino, come in there. So I think you're seeing, I think in the SEC, you're seeing a lot more assistant coaches, a lot more guys maybe who were assistants under a big name coach like Jim McElwain was under Nick Saban, get jobs like that. I don't think you're necessarily seeing the big name coaches that you're used to seeing. Now you're seeing in the ACC and the Big Ten.
When you look at Alabama going into 2016, 151 days away, what do you see for the Crimson Tide?
Well, I see, they have some questions, obviously, and I think it starts on the offense. It starts on whether the new offensive coordinator can come in and what kind of system they want to run and where does this offense go. I mean, I think obviously Jalen Hurts made some tremendous strides last year, but I felt like at times, and we saw a little bit of that in the national title game, he struggled getting the ball down the field. He struggled with his completion percentage, and I think that's something that needs to improve. I think the defense is always going to be loaded. It's always going to be stacked. Yes, they're going to lose a lot of talent with a guy like Jonathan Allen leaving, but I think, you've always got players who can step up. And then again, I think you look at, the offensive side of the ball is, can their line continue to block? Can their line continue to put together a good, strong running game? I think it's going to be Alabama in the West, and I think it's going to be everyone else behind them. But you got programs like Auburn, and you got programs like LSU, and those programs are trying to catch up as fast as they can, and eventually they're going to try to get to that point. So, I mean, it's still Alabama's to lose, I think, but I think again, there has to be some improvement on both sides of the ball for Nick Saban's bunch.
Matt Murschel right now from the Orlando Sentinel as we move forward. The boost of confidence for Kevin Sumlin earlier today from the athletic director out in College Station via the Eagle, which I think is a newspaper out there. But you look at Kevin Sumlin, I cannot explain how this program is not the sleeping giant with everything SEC, recruiting base, the facilities. They've got an unlimited amount of money. If they need more, they just turn on the oil and let it drip all night. You look at Kevin Sumlin, I don't understand why he consistently is 8-5 unless it's something to do with coaching and just not being able to get them over that hump.
Well, it's funny because the last 2 years they've started out really strong. They've gone 5-0 and 6-0, and then they just kind of fell apart. In the second half of the season. I don't know if it's strength and conditioning. I don't know if it has to do with some of that injuries, but I mean that's something that's got to be a concern because, like you said, everything is there. Everything is in place for him to have a really strong year and for the program to have a really strong presence. But there's something that keeps holding them back. I think obviously he needed that boost. He needed to hear that that they're looking that they're not willing to make a change because I would have thought if they struggle again this year that he's going to really be on the hot seat. I think there's of all the jobs made in the SEC, he was going to be the top of that hot seat list because I just think that maybe he got to the point where everyone was so in love with the Johnny Manziel and Johnny football when he first got into the SEC with Texas A&M. I think maybe that kind of fell back a little bit. So I think hopefully if he gets the right kind of recruits, which he's been able to do, and they can kind of finish strong, I think Texas A&M could be right there as well in the West.
Matt, where do you see college football going as a whole? Do you see a separation of this Power 5 and the non-Power 5 schools? I mean, I thought this would move a little bit faster. Are you seeing a transition to this Power 5, the autonomy?
Well, I think you are. I mean, somewhat. I mean, I think you're seeing the money. I think the biggest question to me in the next couple of years is going to be ESPN and what happens in the television market. I mean, obviously there's a big contract with college football playoff. You're seeing these conferences make that big TV deals, but I think you're starting to see a little bit of that money starting to dry up a little bit when it comes to the networks like ESPN and NBC and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see how do these conferences try to take advantage of, maybe, looking at, the cord cutters out there. How do they go about doing it, whether it's, a Netflix type deal or an Amazon or some sort of streaming deal where maybe they can get some money. I keep telling people I don't understand why these Group of 5 conferences aren't trying to make those kind of deals right now because I think that's the future of what we're looking at. And I think you can make a really good deal. You could stream your games somewhere online, and that's what a lot of the millennials are doing right now. I think that would be something we're going to look at seeing because I think eventually the money's going to dry up a little bit. It is the most popular sport out there, but I just feel like all this business model that they've been using the last couple of years needs to change at some point in the next couple.
Yeah, and I think you go back to it, that really will allow the separation, I think, to happen when the money dries up because your schools like Clemson, like Alabama, like Florida State, like Florida, like LSU, the Big Ten teams, they'll continue to get the money, and then you'll really see the separation because right now, as the conferences are divided up, it's sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a term of socialism, but they're bringing all the money in a pot and then they're dividing it. That money's going to dry up, as you said, or at least slow down a little bit from making as much as they were.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what the Power 5 schools are trying to do as well, is they're trying to keep up with facilities. This is something that happened maybe a decade ago. We saw kind of a big everyone ramping up with their stadiums and their football facilities. But now you're really starting to see. You saw, like I mentioned, what Clemson's doing. I think maybe there's a half a dozen to a dozen schools that are doing, work on their stadiums right now to make the fan experience even better. I mean, I think right now everyone's trying to do that. Well, eventually, that money, you got to figure out where that's coming from. And right now it's a television contract. But at some point, they're going to have to figure out a way to do that because that's really why I think you're going to see, as you mentioned, the separation between everyone. Because when the facilities start looking like Olympic-grade facilities, I think that's when you're really going to see the top echelon of programs compared to everyone else.
And I'm not saying that it's there yet, but I think, knowing I do a 4-hour college football show in Tuscaloosa 5 days a week, hearing people complain about the officials is something that I think disconnects the fans. I mean, and I'm talking about the average fan. Some fans are always going to be there regardless, but I think that's one area that we can establish to go back to when we talk about the integrity of the officials, because you watch games like last night or you watch games throughout the season, and it gives you a reason to doubt. I mean, do you believe in the sport? Is it there for truly the sport, or are these officials going to become sort of the focus point? And that's where I'm a little bit afraid. We've got to demand better quality out of those guys in stripes.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see. I mean, I think people are making their voice being heard. I mean, you talk about people upset with officiating. You're talking about people upset about the pace of the game, not just football but basketball. Trying to make things a little bit quicker. I think that's going to be a point that's going to be discussed a lot in the next couple months, especially at the spring meetings. How do they kind of speed things up? I think what you're seeing now is everyone really is turning. These school presidents are turning towards the fans, trying to figure out what can we do to make your experience more pleasurable. What can we do to make things right? And some of that goes back to the officiating. Some of that goes back to the fan experience at the games, on television. So I think, again, this is where it's going to be crucial as these schools try to look to kind of get a little bit of separation, how they treat the fan, how they make the experience better for everyone.
Well, I mean, Matt, we had a head coach by the name of Nick Saban, which some would argue he's the best in the business. He came out 1 week ago in a press conference and said, we're going to take advantage. What is our offense going to look like? We're going to take advantage of the college rules. We're going to take advantage. And basically what he's saying is, he didn't say this, but it's what he said. I want to be a well-rounded, pro-style offense that takes advantage of the college rules. What's he talking about? He's talking about the officials that missing so many calls, whether it's ineligible linemen downfield or controlling the tempo of the game. So when you have a coach like Nick Saban that stands at the podium and says, I'm going to take advantage of the college rules, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, and I think, you've seen that over the last couple of years because of the fact of spread offenses. You're seeing how, the hurry-ups, how can they take advantage of, getting plays snaps before the defense is fully ready. I know officials have tried to change that to make it, better for the defensive players and defensive coaches. But I think as long as those rules are there, I think if I'm Nick Saban or any coach, you try to take advantage of them as much as you can because you're tired of other people taking advantage of you when it comes to that rule book. So you just got to do whatever it takes to kind of, get that to the next level. I think that's why rules are such a key issue over the next, it's been that way the last couple of years and will be that way the next couple of years because they want to make sure that everything's kind of fair and square as you move forward.
Matt, what are you hearing about this 10th coach? Are you hearing anything? Because I know we're going to be voting in the next few days, maybe the next week. That vote is supposed to be submitted. What are you hearing about this 10th coach in college football?
Well, I think, I've spoken with several coaches that really would like to see this happen. They want it to come down. It's just whether or not, you can, your school can get it set up and whether or not the conferences vote, like you said, get it moving forward. And the NCAA. It's something that definitely is there's an interest between the coaches. I think, one of the things that don't want to get lost on that is this is all coming down around the same time. They're talking about, that new December, early signing period, too. So I think those are two big key issues that coaches right now are watching very carefully because they know that could change. It could make a big difference in the future.